really appreciate you coming on. Ryan Hendrickson, like, I was reading some of your background, and what an amazing like story you've got, dude. It's pretty wild. Injured in Afghanistan, recovered. And now you wrote a book. Now you're doing stuff in Ukraine. You're just like, it's kind of all over the place. And I'm really interested in hearing your story. And I'd kind of like to start at the beginning. I know I read somewhere that your dad was a Vietnam vet, and I was wondering if that was kind of what made you pursue a career in the military.
Yeah, my dad, he did 2 tours in Vietnam. He was a crew chief on Huey's. But yeah, the military has always been kind of that thing in my family where, you should give your country 4 years and then, grow up a little bit, see the world, whatever it is. And then after that 4 years, you can come back and figure out what you want to do with your life. My 4 years just happened to turn into 22 years, but yeah, it's been pretty, it was pretty well known in my family. It's like, give your country 4 years and then figure out what you want to do from there.
Now, some people will take that as like, is that only military service, or is that like, hey, you can work in the government, we just want you to do something for the public good kind of deal?
Yeah, no, it's not only military service. It's any service to your country. I mean, hell, a lot of people don't look at it this way, but I mean, think about our agriculture industry and the people that make America go. I've been to Afghanistan a lot, and I'll get home and I'll have, people say, thank you for your service. And it's like, well, what do you do? It's like, well, I'm a farmer. And it's like, well, then I got to thank you for yours too, because
100%.
You're what actually makes this country go round.
100%.
And so, yeah, it's just serving your country. And it sounds like a military thing, but it's not. There's so many ways you could serve.
Just be a good citizen. Yeah, for sure. I like that you said that. I told my brother-in-law the same thing, because he's a union guy, union construction worker. And, he talked about, he came to one of my going aways when I deployed to Afghanistan and stuff. And I was, after the whole fact, after I got out, I'm like, look, dude, the war in Afghanistan's over. What did we accomplish, man? You're over here building buildings. You're building buildings over at Purdue University so that everyone's going to see that. So many people are going to use those. So people that didn't join, it's kind of weird. It's like, don't be mad at what you did in life as long as you're being positive, for your community and stuff,
Yeah. As long as you are benefiting this country for the better, then you're serving your country.
100%. Yeah, I like that. So what made you choose the Army?
So I didn't choose the Army off the bat. I have 2 other branches of service that I was in before I wound up in the Army.
Oh, I didn't know that. Okay.
Yeah, I was in the Navy first for 4 years. Did 4 years in the Air Force, and then I switched over to the Army and did what was it, 14? So
I don't know how I missed that. How did you? So you knocked out 3 of the 4 branches there, or 5, I guess, if we want to count the Coast Guard. What made you choose the Navy in the beginning then?
Because in the mid '90s, the other branches weren't really looking for anybody, and my test scores, in the mid '90s, the Air Force kind of thought it was cute that I even tried to apply for the Air Force. The Army, even for infantry, there was like an 8-month wait. They just didn't need anybody. The Marine Corps, that guy, I mean, the recruiter was just so scary, and he was super angry all the time. I was like, oh my God, I don't want to be a Marine. You guys are scary.
Bunch of psychos over there.
No, he's just scary. He was just a scary dude. I was like, man, I don't want to be around a bunch of you guys. And then the Navy recruiter, he was just this cool guy, talking about foreign ports and foreign women and all this other stuff. And I was like, I'm 18 years old, small farm town, Oregon. I'm like, yeah, of course I want to do this. So that's kind of how the Navy came around. So.
Yeah, I did a couple deployments on ship, man, and the ports are cool, but everything else about it is just miserable. I don't know what was your job in the Navy?
I was a bosun's mate. I was a grunt.
Oh man, so yeah, you guys are the ones just doing whatever's got to get done.
Yeah,
living down in the forecastle when nothing's going on.
Yeah, no, it was definitely. I learned a lot in the Navy, especially in the mid '90s. It was Clinton era military, there was, yeah, it was a great experience. I wouldn't go back and do it again, but I'm glad I did it.
Yeah, okay, I can see that, man. Can you explain real quick for people that may not know what a bosun's mate is? Because that's a pretty classic Navy like job, right?
Mm-hmm. It's just a jack of all trades on the ship. It's not a real technical. What was not a MOS? I think the Navy calls them rates, rating, something like that. Anyways, it's not a real technical rate. It's a lot of just manual labor. So chipping rust and primer and paint and or you have your different duties, or you have when you're on watch, you have your different duty stations, whether you're steering the ship or communicating with the engine room, or you're the so it'd be like the helmsman, lee helmsman, and then you have your different lookout or watch positions, whether it's port, starboard, aft, forward, all those other depending on the type of ship you're on. And when you're not on watch, then you're working, and it could be, yeah, there's all kinds, but it's kind of like the jack of all trades. Cause I was on an amphibious ship, the USS Shreveport. So, we did a lot of well deck operations with the Marines. And so it's, there's a lot of fun to it too, but, you're the Navy's grunt without a gun, basically the way I put it.
Yeah, that makes sense. Do you have your bosun's pipe still?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah. That's awesome.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's another thing. That's like when I remember us being deployed, we went to Singapore, and some of the bosun's mates traded bosun's pipes with the Singaporean Navy guys. It was like a pretty cool thing.
Yeah, I got in some trouble in Singapore. It was a good time.
Oh man, Boat Quai, was it Boat Quai and River Quai? That little area right there in Singapore. What a great spot. Awesome
place in the 90s.
Oh yeah, I can't imagine now. Did you get to go to Hong Kong? Did you ever get to do that? I'm always interested talking to people now that went to Hong Kong, or that went to Hong Kong before. I'd like to see what it is like now that China's got full control, because before it was like a huge party, like, it was a great time, and I'm wondering if it's still kind of that same kind of way. But so most people in the military, if they don't like their job, they switch jobs within the military. Not too many switch branches. What drove you to switch branches, and what did you pick in the Air Force?
So I got out of the Navy April 2001, and I was a civilian for a few years. And then, after 9/11 happened, then Afghanistan, then Iraq kicked off. And I was like, oh, this is actually going to be kind of a long-term thing. I've never been in a wartime military situation before. It was peacetime minus the USS Cole. And so, so I was a civilian already for, a couple of years, and I decided to join the military again. Well, I didn't want to go back to the Navy, cause it kind of the been there, done that.
For sure.
I was married at the time. And the girl I was married to, she just got out of the Army, so she didn't want to go back to the Army life. I saw how Marines lived on ship, so I was like, Marine Corps is still not in the equation here at all. Plus, I just didn't want to get beat down that bad in training. And then, and so the Air Force, so I went back in the Air Force, the recruiting office, and I had to retake the ASVABs because apparently, being a knuckle dragger isn't really a career field in the Air Force. So retook that, got a high enough score, and then went over to, the Air Force side of things. And I was an ammo troop over there, which, they were extremely, I mean, it's probably one of the most important jobs in the Air Force, because you literally put bombs on aircraft. And in 2003, we were dropping a lot of bombs. Mm-hmm. So, and there's different jobs. You have your weapons troops, you have your ammo troops, but it all combines together to basically put bombs on target. And it was an amazing job. I went to Iraq and, a couple other places, but it wasn't feeding that, that excitement or that overwhelming question that I think all men have. And that's, what would I do how would I act in combat? What would I do when someone's trying to kill me? How am I going to react when bullets are flying? I wasn't going to get that from that job. So as important of a job as it is, because we drop a lot of bombs as Americans, I wasn't going to be able to answer that question. And I hadn't really, I was just kind of going through the military day by day, left, right, left, turning food into shit and kind of moving on with my life. And I needed something to kind of challenge myself with. And that came in the form of a divorce. And when I got divorced, I was going to the personnel office for the Air Force, and I saw this poster on the wall, and it had this service member in half Class A's and half Air Force dress blues, and so Army Class A's and dress blues, and it said go blue to green. It's like, what is this? So I just asked about it, and as I'm trying to update my records for being single now and not married. And they told me what it was, and I was like, "Oh, well, it's if you're in an overmanned career field in the Air Force, you can do a direct transfer over to the Army and keep your same rank and basically do the same job." So I got talking to them. They put me in contact with an Army recruiter, and he's like, "Yeah, we can bring you into the Army ammunition career field, MOS." I was like, "Well, I mean, I kind of want to do something else, man. Maybe a little dangerous or something. I don't know." And he's like, "Well, we have an 18 X-ray contract that you can switch over and basically you go through infantry, advanced infantry, jump school, 18 X-ray prep course selection, and if you get selected, then you go through the Q course, and if you make it through the Q course, you're a Green Beret." And I was like, yeah, right. Bosun's mate, ammo troop, Green Beret. I was like, it doesn't really work that way, man. I've never been in a MOS that, we fired weapons for our job. I've just basically been a grunt for both the Air Force and the Navy. And he's like, well, I mean, you never know. And so I just got to thinking, I was like, well, I got the opportunity. And if I don't at least try, I'm going to get to an age where I'm going to look back and I'm going to regret that I never actually tried. And when I know that I could have. And regret's that's a bad deal for an old man or an old person, because you look back at all the chances you missed in life and you could have easily took them. You were just either scared of failure or you were too lazy to even try. Mm-hmm. And my situation was I was scared of failure because I was like, I have no business being a Green Beret. I wasn't infantry. I wasn't Marine Corps infantry. I don't even know, the only thing I got going for me is I'm a country boy and my dad raised me a certain way. Other than that, like land navigation, what are you talking about? I can see the peak over there, so I'm going to walk to that peak. And and that's just how I got where I went in Oregon. And so, yeah, it was very intimidating for me, but I just kept thinking, if I don't at least try, then I'm going to look back and I'm going to regret that I never even tried because I was scared.
100%.
And so, yeah, I signed the paperwork, and a couple weeks later, they transferred me from the Air Force to the Army, and I was at Fort Benning.
Just starting training, huh? So real quick, this was
going through infantry basic. Yeah.
Oh, really? Nice.
Yeah.
That's funny. I like the point that you made there. You're at this fork in the road of your life, and it's like, I have to make a decision. And if you don't have the nuts to try, you're going to look back at that fork in the road forever and go, man, could I have? And you'll never know, yeah. And it's a tough spot to be in, man, because you never know what the results are going to be, but it's like, that's the stuff you have to do to get the results in life that you want, I mean, you obviously know what I'm talking about. You have to pull the trigger. You have to kind of shape your own destiny a little bit.
Well, my dad calls it the number one killer of old men, is looking back with regrets. And there was a story he told me years ago. I think I was still in high school, but he said, because I was really nervous about going into the Navy, leaving home. I've never flown anywhere before. I didn't really know what to expect. You know what I mean? Because I'm leaving a town of 1,300 people where I thought I was a badass. And now all of a sudden, I'm going into the real world and it's like, oh, nobody cares about, Ryan Hendrickson, senior year football game or wrestling match. I mean, geez. But he told me, he said, there's these two old men and they're sitting on their porch and one old man, he's looking back on his life and he's just miserable. He has nothing but regrets. Excuse me. Sorry. He has nothing but regrets. And he knows that he's let life pass him by. He was always too scared, too timid, worried of failure, or he never wanted to step out of his comfort zone and take a chance. Because, when you take a chance, you become vulnerable, and people don't like vulnerability. They like to be in control. Mm-hmm. And so he's looking back on his life, and he's miserable because he knows he let life pass him by. And at that point in time, he realized, like, wow, I have one chance at life. I kept saying, I'll do it tomorrow. I'll do it tomorrow. And now I don't have the ability to do it. And I never tried. So he's living there. He's sitting there and he has regrets, despair, and everything else. And he's just a miserable old man. Then, the second old man is sitting next to him and he's happy. He's content. He's fulfilled because he's done it all. He's lived the life that he's lived the best life he could. He took the chances. He failed. He succeeded. He fell flat on his face. He picked himself back up. He squeezed every bit of life he could out of the situation he was in while he had the chance. And so he's just sitting there and he's looking back on all these great memories that he has and in everything he did. And he's content and he's happy. And my dad said, which old man do you want to be? And so that really stuck with me it still does, at 44, it still sticks with me. But, but I knew, sitting in the Army recruiting office that if I didn't at least try, I would be that old man looking back and saying, why didn't you at least try, man? Like you had the chance, you weren't going to die. It's just, you were scared about stepping out of your comfort zone. You were scared about making yourself vulnerable, and you were scared about the chance, the let's face it, the high chance of failure, because it's a special forces, special operations type job that not everybody makes it through training. Mm-hmm. And I didn't want to be that old man looking back. So I was like, look, I'm going to give it everything I got. So in the end, if I don't make it, at least I knew that I gave it my all. And I'll be happy with that. 100%. And that was my mentality that I went into training with.
Yeah, man. No, I 100% agree. I think you're 100% right. You're never going to make all the right decisions, and you're never going to complete all the goals or tasks or whatever that you want in life. But if you try, like you said, become vulnerable, get outside your comfort zone a little bit and try something different, it opens so many doors, man. It's like, I even like to drive around and just go down random roads just to cruise around, know the town. Like, what's over here? What is these? You run into different restaurants or coffee shop or something you've never seen before. And you go try it out. It's just changing things up in life is what makes it interesting in my perspective. So let's talk about.
Understand there's strength through vulnerability. For sure.
And sometimes it doesn't work out for you. And you're embarrassed or you're whatever. Something happens. But you know what?
That's when you get stronger.
Exactly. That's the price to pay. That's the price you pay when you're on your road to all these other awesome opportunities that you introduce yourself to because you're willing to try. Yeah.
Yep.
For sure, man. So yeah, let's talk about your Army training. So you only went to Navy boot camp? You didn't go to Air Force boot camp, or did you go to Air Force boot camp, and you obviously didn't go to Army boot camp? You just went straight into training.
No. So I went to Navy boot camp. Air Force, I just did a transition course, so no boot camp. But Army, oh no. I went through all of infantry basic, all of AIT, and then moved on to jump school. And yeah, I was an E5 doing it all. But I still did the full meal deal. You're supposed to be able to start at AIT and move on. But I kind of I didn't get that memo. And so I started basic over at Fort Benning, and I think it was like 3 or 4 days into it, the drill sergeant comes up and he goes, "Hey, dude, you're not supposed to be here." And just going through a divorce and everything like that, because I was supposed to be in the awaiting training phase where it's just like you just sit there in the barracks and wait. But just going through a divorce, and I didn't want to have all that downtime with so much time to think about everything. I just wanted to be constantly employed. I wanted to be working, and I loved it. I was having a blast. And so I asked if I could stay, and they were like, "Okay, you're going to have to play the stupid games, but yeah, man, I mean,
who requests to stay in boot camp when you don't have to be there?" That's hilarious.
Yeah, I'm glad I did. I'm definitely glad I did, because I was able to help a lot of those younger guys that were coming in at 18 years old and just very unsure and probably pretty nervous and not really understanding how the military works and what their life is going to be and all this other stuff, and so it was a great time to help mentor some of these guys, and it was awesome. So it was a really strange, but a really, really good experience for me at a time when I needed it the most.
Yeah, no, I can see that, getting divorced and everything like that. That's definitely a way to keep your mind off stuff, being in an environment like that. So with the 18 X-ray program, you're saying you go to and that's something else other people may not realize. I don't have a lot of Army guys. You're like the fourth, maybe fourth or fifth Army guy I've had on here, but the Army has different boot camps depending on your MOS. So infantry guys go to a boot camp, comm guys go to a different boot camp, RD guys go out to Fort Sill for their boot camp. So for the 18 X-ray program, you're going to Benning for your infantry boot camp. Because they know you're an 18 X-ray candidate, I guess at this point, are you treated differently than the other guys? Are they do they expect more from you? Does the assessment kind of start from the beginning, from boot camp, really, for that kind of program?
I mean, you're always being assessed, and if you're a turd moving forward, the word's going to spread.
For sure.
With as large as as large of an army as we have, it's actually the networks are very quick at spreading the word, and people have ways of digging up dirt on everybody. So I would say you're constantly being assessed, but no, I mean, I didn't really see any difference between me and the other infantry troops. I definitely heard it a lot was, yeah, man, hey, good luck in selection, but I'm pretty sure we'll see you in the 82nd, because that's where all the dropouts go, either back to their unit, or if they're 18 X-ray, they go straight across the street to the 82nd, which, great organization and everything like that. But that's just a nice way of saying, like, you're not going to make it kind of thing. And I heard that other guys were saying that and stuff like that. And I was just like, well, we'll see. But
somebody's got to make it, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's the mentality you got to go into something like that. Like, why not me? I think there's too many people are like, oh, I can never make that, rather than why can't I ever make that, kind of mentality. So after your infantry training, is that, I guess, kind of walk us through like the training pipeline.
Yeah. So I went through basic, then advanced infantry training, and then I went to airborne school. And at airborne school, that's where I figured out that I hated heights. Was not a fan of it. I remember, growing up as a kid, we'd go swimming, we'd be jumping off these rocks or whatnot, and I didn't really like to be up that high, but I didn't really think too much into it until I'm at I don't know, maybe 1,000 feet, and standing in the door, and it's time
for real
to go
now. Yeah, it's for real.
And I'm not wanting to go. So yeah, airborne school was definitely an eye opener for me on what I did not like, and that's heights. And then after that, you graduate airborne school, and then you head over to Fort Bragg, where you start the where you start the 18 X-ray prep course, and the preparation course is is brutal. It was extremely hard because the mentality is if we can weed you out now, then we don't have to spend all the money later. So it was a beatdown session. I mean, definitely, for sure. But if you make it through the 18 X-ray course, when you get to selection, 18 X-rays usually had a very high selection rate because the 18 X-ray course the prep course is very, very physically demanding. And by the time you get over to selection, it's almost like, wow, okay, I can take a break finally. Mm-hmm. Selection's a beast. Team week is extremely hard, very super horrible. But the X-ray course, I believe it should be that prep course should be mandatory for everyone going over because it weeds out so many, and you are in phenomenal shape when you get to selection.
Interesting. That's interesting. I had Todd Opolsky on before a couple episodes ago, and he was a recon Marine that went over to JSOC and Delta, and I mentioned how a lot of basically I think all the special operations units now have a prep course for their selection courses for what you're talking about, to like weed guys out, get guys kind of ready. And he was totally against that. He's like, hey, come ready. You know, like we expect you, like he's like, that's part of the problem with what's going on with the military becoming worse or whatever. He's like, you should come ready to these kind of courses. And if you can't come ready, then you shouldn't be there anyways. What's your take on that from one, being someone that's gone through the course and passed, but two, also served in the military in special operations in a high tempo time where people were needed for these missions?
So I mean, I definitely see his point, and I definitely understand what he's talking about. Mm-hmm. I know my view on it is this. Yes, you should come to the course, prepared and ready. You have to come to the 18 X-ray, prep course, or I don't know how the Marines, I don't know their prep course for, MARSOC or anything like that, but you got to come to these prep courses ready also. It's not like you're not ready, but you just, you're going to be conditioned in a different way. So like for me, in the 18 X-ray prep course, we learned a lot about, not only were we, getting physically just pounded all the time, but we were also learning stuff. We were learning land nav. We were learning these other things that are going to help us be successful in selection in the Q course. And so for me, military land nav, it was great that I was being able to pick this up in the prep course because I didn't know anything about it. And I could look up a video on it, but, I mean, still, when you're trying to find, all your points in the middle of the night and you've never done it before, you're just going off a YouTube video, chances of success are kind of slim. So I'm a firm believer in these prep courses because it does. What happens is you get people coming in there with the idea or the Hollywood version of what they think they're going to do in this job. And the prep course level is what weeds a lot of these guys out. And because they realize like, oh, I had no idea it was going to be like this. I don't want any part of this. Mm-hmm. And so you're at a very basic and easy to transition you somewhere else course than it is if you've already checked into that training pipeline. And now you're moving through, the phases and you figure out, I don't want to do this anymore. When it could have been figured out in the prep course. And so I do understand what he's saying, as in from the mindset point of view. Yes, you should come to all of these courses mentally prepared, but the prep course, I don't believe, is a mental preparedness course. It is a preparation for what you're about ready to embark on. And you'll find out in the prep course if you really want to do that or not. Mm-hmm. And so that's what I feel is so effective about it. But I do agree with him 100%. Like you got to be mentally prepared to do any of these. But I think the prep course is very important because you can get rid of the guys that thought they were ready or thought this was a good idea or thought the job would be like this, and it's not.
Yeah, and I mean, that frees up viable seats, like viable candidates to go into these seats rather than someone that wouldn't have made
Yes.
it. The other thing too I like about the prep course is that you may have like a diamond in the rough. If you get some kid from the city that's only thing he's done is maybe the 18 X-ray program. That's the only like outdoor activities he's ever had in his life. He's probably not very good at land nav. He's probably not good at a lot of things that you would want out of a field or soldier in this case. So I think that's another thing too, is that if we don't do that, there's a lot of people out there that are very capable of doing these like high level special operations jobs. They don't even realize it though, because they've never been given the opportunity to like learn some of the basics of the jobs. So I agree with you, man. I see, like you said, I see both sides. I see, especially when he's talking, I think he was also talking at like the Delta level, and I'm like, well, yeah, that's like pro athlete. You're not going to show up and not be ready for your job. You're a pro athlete at that point.
Yeah, you're stepping from the University of Alabama football team to the Buffalo Bills. Yes, I completely understand it at that level.
Yeah.
And I'm not, I'm not saying one level is better than the other, because your Green Berets, Marine Corps Recon, Marine Corps Recon, MARSOC, your Navy SEALs, they all serve a very, very important mission, and we all kind of look at it. Well, MARSOC in Special Forces, Green Beret, we're pretty aligned with what we do together. MARSOC's becoming extremely good in the unconventional warfare aspect, which is what Green Berets, that's our bread and butter. But SEALs, MARSOC, Green Berets, we're all extremely important. Delta and DevGru, they are too. Their level is, they are the pro athletes at their level of direct action and counterterrorism. Whereas I believe MARSOC and Green Berets, we're the pro athletes. We're the NFL when it comes to unconventional warfare and stuff like that. So I don't ever look at the tiers and say, oh yeah, they're better than us because of this. They're better than us at direct action and counterterrorism and stuff like that. Yes, they're the best in the world, and nobody can question that. But then when you look at another avenue that's not as sexy, like unconventional warfare, now it's like, oh, okay, U.S. Army Special Forces, Green Berets, and MARSOC. And then SEALs with what they do, I'm not even going to go into all that because I don't understand, a lot of the world. But yeah, they're the best in the world. At their own
missions,
at what they do. Yeah, 100%. So, yeah, when it comes to the different tiers and the levels, and it's like Rangers. Like Rangers are, out of everyone in the world, if I ever went to an area and I was like, all right, I need to clear this entire area and kill everybody, Rangers are the best in the world.
There's some Marine infantrymen out there that may disagree, but, we'll leave it at that.
Well, I don't have experience with
that's true. That's true. Yeah, so... Yeah, it's you're right. Everybody has their own jobs. It's funny when people compare stuff. It's like, dude, you're comparing two jobs that aren't even similar. Why would you like if you're going to compare like a PJ to a SEAL? It's like those are two different jobs, man. Like they're both badasses in their own realms, but like they're two different jobs.
Extremely badass operators in their own realm, but it's two different jobs, like you're saying. So.
Yeah. So with your job, let's talk about selection. Can you tell us about kind of to get into the Green Berets, to become a Green Beret, can you kind of talk us through the phases, like an overview of the phases for that, and tell us maybe like what was the hardest phase for you?
So yeah, going through the 18 X-ray prep course was very difficult. And when I actually got to selection, it was tough, and we lost a lot of guys, but it wasn't as hard as I thought it was going to be because the X-ray course prepared us for selection. Team week did exactly what it's supposed to do. It crushed us, but that's what they do. I mean, that's what happens in team week is you get a glimpse of operating on an ODA under extremely harsh conditions with weights on your back that you never thought was even possible. and moving objects that it's not physically possible to do it. And then you figure out how to do it because you got 12 guys working together, or you don't and you fail. But then, once I got selected, starting to move through the Q course, I would say, small unit tactics was a ball buster. It was very challenging. I learned a lot, but man, you learn a lot with no sleep, constantly moving, weights of excess of 90 to 120 pounds on your back all the time. And
crazy.
And you're just moving through the North Carolina, woods, and set up ambush here. All right. Recock, set up ambush here. All right. Recock, set up ambush. And so it was very extremely challenging. But I finished SET, and then I moved on to SEER school, and that is what it is. It's difficult, but I'll just kind of leave it at that. From SEER school, moved on to language, and language is it's relaxing, but you can fail super quick because they're like, we're not pounding the crap out of you here, but you still got to learn a whole nother language, depending on the group you're going to. And if you don't learn this language, it's not the physical thing that's going to take you out of this course. It's the academic part of it.
It's like a mental haze fest. Were you guys at the Defense Language Institute?
We were at the Fort Bragg language labs.
Oh, okay. So, you guys got, okay.
Cool. Yeah. And then I moved on to MOS phase where, I was an 18 Charlie and engineer. So lots of demo and learning how to blow things up and stuff like that. And it's a extremely academic course because of all demolition theory, the calculations, and everything like that. From there, Robin Sage. Robin Sage is the cumulative exercise that it spans multiple states. And so all these states are basically turned into these fictitious countries where one country's at war with another country. And it's kind of crazy because it looks actually what's going on in Ukraine right now. We are in the Ukrainian country, and I think they call it like Limnadia or something like that. I don't know. But anyways, this fictitious country, or Russia, is done a full-scale invasion, and now we are inserted in behind enemy lines, linking up with a guerrilla unit to do a resistance or an insurgency or whatever, to do A, B, C, D, or E, all circled around unconventional warfare. It's why Green Berets are probably the best in the world at unconventional warfare. So Robin Sage, and that's not only is it ball buster, because we infield in a blizzard. Our canteens were frozen, and you got 110 plus pounds on your back, and we moved. I think our infill point was like 15, 20 kilometers away. So it is. It's a smoke session, but it's all circled around unconventional warfare because you're doing this link up. If you go back to October 2001 and you look at some of the interviews with Green Berets that infiltrated Afghanistan to link up with the Northern Alliance, most of them all say somewhere in an interview, it was just like Robin Sage. It's crazy. Robin Sage is super realistic. Like there was parts where, because you're tired. There was multiple times where you were going days without food because if you can't figure out how to get it supplied to you as a unit, well, you're not going to do it in war either. When you're actually needing to do it. And there was times when I was looking there and I was like, is this for real? Like this is really happening? And it's such an amazing exercise. I think it's actually probably the best exercise out of all the military. I don't think there's another exercise that can touch on the aspects that Robin Sage does. True. Your bosun's mate doesn't need to go to Robin Sage, but when you're looking at, special operations and infiltrating into a country to set up a guerrilla resistance or start an insurgency or anything like that, Robin Sage is it. That's the cream of the crop. And so, yeah, I mean, after that, then, you go through graduation, you get ready to move on to your group, and then figure out your battalion and your company and then your ODA. But I would say the most difficult part of special forces training as a whole is, I mean, yeah, there was times that I was just like, wow, how does the human body do this? But overall, it wasn't that difficult. What gets people the most is it's so long, and you're constantly being assessed, and you're constantly the new guy, like you've not done shit. This is your first time, once you start a new phase, you're the new guy all over again. You haven't done shit. You're never going to do shit. You won't ever be shit. And you're just like, what is going on, man? And the longevity of the course, 14, 15 months plus, if you're a Delta, you're looking at 2+ years of just training, assessment. A lot of guys, it's the mental aspect of that breaks a lot of people. So, for example, my selection class, we started off with 405 guys. It was an October selection class, and I remember they had to get rid of some dudes, so it came all the way down to the packing list, and it's like, 3 pairs of socks, not 5. You're gone,
Wow.
Just to shave off those last dudes. So by the end of selection, there was 55 of us that got selected. Out of the 55 of us that got selected, 18 of us graduated the Q course.
Oh, wow.
So,
really?
Yeah. So it's definitely, now a lot of guys go to selection and the Q course. And that's the reason why, there's a lot of students always in the training pipeline.
Mm-hmm.
And so it looks like there's a lot of people graduating, but these are all different. Like they all come at different times. And, so like Robin Sage class, I was meeting up with guys that had been in the Q course for over 2 years. Just, either it was injury or they'd get recycled through a phase or something like that. And even in Robin Sage, when you're like, I got it, man. I did it. This is it. I'm there. A lot of guys get dropped there. A lot of guys do. And in the end, they could, and I've seen it. I've seen it in TRs, never to return from Robin Sage, because you're just not what we're looking for. And it's like, couldn't you have told me that 2 years ago? I just wasted 2 years of my life, and, but it's the harsh reality of it. So I think the hardest part of the Q course for me was the mental mind games, the mental aspect of, you can get dropped at any time, and it doesn't matter how far you are in the course. We don't care. You could be on the last day of Robin Sage when your instructor brings you in one by one to tell you how you did. And, oh, by the way, are you gonna pass? Are you getting recycled, or are you getting dropped to return on a later date, or are you getting dropped to never return? And that's at the very end. You're like, I've just done it all. I had a friend that got NTR'd, and it's like he never even went to selection, and he did the entire Q course.
Damn, that sucks.
Yeah, it happens.
That'd be a tough pill to swallow, especially if you're like the Deltas, the medics that go through like the super extensive training.
Yep. Yeah, and this is what's crazy, is it happens so much. Like, I'm mind blown. Now, this was when I went through, and I'm not saying I'm this OG or anything like that, but I've heard it changed a lot. I've heard that it's not as easy to get rid of guys now as it was. But again, I don't know, because I'm not there. That's just hearsay.
Just send them over to the advisor battalions or whatever, or that new advisor battalions that they started up.
I don't. Yeah. No, they're good at what they do.
Yeah, for sure, man. I mean, I'm sure they are. They get training just like, I mean, I was an advisor. It's not like my training in the Marines was we had advisor specific training, but nothing like you're going to go through with Robin Sage. I remember as a kid, my dad was in the Army, so I remember as a kid hearing about Robin Sage because I lived in Tennessee. So it was, they let the region kind of know about it, because there was always they're working in the communities where the real like actual heavy part of the exercises are happening. All the communities are involved, for those that don't know. And actually, like 10 years ago, a couple guys got shot by a cop because he thought they were like some kind of criminals in the back of a truck, but they were Green Beret candidates in the middle of Robin Sage.
Yeah, since that incident happened, they wear the identifying armbands and stuff like that, I think. But yeah, basically the candidates thought that the police officer was part of this scenario, so they drew their M4 with blanks on him, and he was like, "Oh, yeah, and shots. They exchanged fire. One people had blank firing adapters, and the other, well, he did not."
Damn, man, that's so crazy.
Yep.
So after you finish up, you're done, you've been selected, you graduated, all your MOS training's done. How long before you're on a team getting ready to start a workup or, start doing the job?
So it took me, I graduated in, pretty much right after the holidays. And so it was a little bit longer because people are on holiday leave and stuff like that. But I was heading over to 7th Group, which was there right on Fort Bragg. So 3rd Group and 7th Group, when I came through the course, was on Bragg. So for us, you graduate and that day you're heading over to your battalion to figure out how cool you're really not when you thought
now you're the new guy again.
Yes, you thought you're this badass that just got your Green Beret, and you're getting invited into this fraternity of heroes, and then you find out that you're again not shit, haven't done shit, will never be shit. You're just like, what? But for some guys it's quick. Like me, I just had to go across the street to 7th Group.
Nice.
But for others, it's not. It's it just all depends on the processing or the in-processing part. But I'm fairly certain, because I didn't do it personally, I don't really know, but I'm fairly certain, like 10th Group, 1st Group, 5th Group, they went, they would fly to or maybe if they were living at Bragg because they PCS from their other unit to Bragg, now they PCS from Bragg to the group that they're going to. So yeah, it could probably take them a little while, but no, for me, it went straight from I'm a cool guy to I'm not shit in about a day.
And did you roll into a team that was getting ready to deploy, that were on their way into deployment, on their way back? How did that look?
Both. So I got to my battalion, and this was during the surge. This is right when the surge happened. So our team was just getting back. The team that I went to was just getting back from Afghanistan, thought they were going to have some time at home. And then they announced the surge. And so the team was literally getting 4 months at home and then heading back to Afghanistan. So for me, I showed up to my team and everyone's extremely pissed off. And so not only am I the new guy, but everyone is very mad because they just got the news that they're going to get about minus all the training time with, pre-mission training and everything like that. They're going to get about 2 months at home before heading back. And so, yeah, that's it. So both, I came to a team that just got back from Afghanistan, and we were just getting ready to go to Afghanistan again.
4 months in between deployments, man. That's insane.
Oh yeah. Oh, I would average, an ODA would average probably 9 months gone a year.
Yeah. And that's training and deployments, right?
Yep.
Training,
deployments, JSETs, CNTs, all that.
I talked to Greg Coker on the last episode. He's a Little Bird pilot with the 160th. And I think that's about what we were talking about it. I think that's about the common denominator across special operations is about 9 months away from home a year. And that's, training, deployments, and whatever. And then you have that 3 months. That's why being married or having a real family, within one of those units is real tough.
It's super tough. But when I think, what was it, Obama announced the surge, it was, everything was just like, hey, I know you guys just got home, but sorry, this is what's happening.
Yeah.
And so yeah, I didn't have long to wait, because when you get to a team, when there's a war going on and you get to whatever team it is you're going to, whether it's a SEAL platoon or MARSOC team, Ranger Regiment, Special Forces ODA, you're judged by what you have or haven't done in combat, and you could be a guy walking onto the team with a silver star, but if they didn't see it, you haven't done shit. And so I didn't have to wait long to prove myself to the team, because, in 2010, it was, well, yeah, cool. You're always going to be the outsider until the bullets start flying. Mm-hmm. And then you start to make those bonds, because people can start to trust you because of how you reacted or didn't react in a stressful, adrenaline-filled situation. And so, yeah, that's, that I didn't have to wait long for that. And some guys, like a lot of the new guys going on to teams now, that, they're there with the old crusty dudes that were OEF, OIF, or, Resolute Support and all this other stuff. And these poor kids that are going in now, they're just like, shit, man. I mean, can we kick off a war so I can prove myself?
Yeah, that's gotta be tough.
That's the mentality right now, because the teams are, whatever special operations job you have, the teams are full of dudes that cut their teeth in either Iraq or Afghanistan or, Somalia, Yemen, whatever, if you're at those levels. Mm-hmm. But in Africa, the same. But yeah, it's, now it's you can walk down the halls and see probably 90% of companies and guys running around, and they don't have combat patches or they have combat patches from their previous units, because deployments are getting far and few in between for combat scenarios, unless you're in, a unit that is, actively conducting counterterrorism direct action missions, which is your CAG and your SEAL Team 6. So
yeah,
and there's a lot of other units, 160th and stuff like that. I don't want to leave anybody out, but I'm also
there's a lot of cool guys out there. I think we all know there's a lot of cool dudes out there.
I wasn't a cool guy, so I don't really know their jobs that well.
I always say in the podcast, man, there's always someone cooler than you. You're not the coolest guy in the room, probably. Nope. The odds of that are very, very slim. There's always somebody that's got more stories. So what did you have the short turnaround time. You're going right to your unit and going right to Afghanistan. What did your training look like as the new guy? How did your team try to prep you for this upcoming deployment?
Sit in the back, shut your mouth, open your ears and eyes, and don't say a thing, because we don't care what you have to say.
All right.
Yeah, it was a fire hose, a blast in the face fire hose, pre-mission training. And we do PMT also. So PMT is a month, or maybe it's a little bit longer than that, month-long exercise, where the scenario is you have your FOB, and you go out and you conduct missions like you would in Afghanistan, depending on the area you're going to or the mission set that you have. Mm-hmm. And so, that training it's awesome. And all the groups go through it, and I'm pretty sure MARSOC and SEALs do the same thing. But yeah, it's just pre-mission training, and so there you're just being ran through the scenarios, and it is how if you're a shitbag there, you're probably not going to make the deployment. So you got to show up, and as the new guy, it's a very stressful environment, because you're constantly, even after the Q course, you're constantly being assessed, but you're being assessed at a whole new level. Mm-hmm. Is this guy going to get me killed in combat or not?
Yeah, because it's about to be for real.
Yeah, and so it's definitely stressful, but that stress has to be there. You need that stress, because there's nothing more stressful than being in a situation where someone's trying to kill you. That's a pretty stressful situation. Yeah. Pre-mission training, they try to equate the same kind of stresses that you may face in combat, but you can't without actually trying to kill you. There's no way to, mimic that stress and that adrenaline level without 7.62 just, cracking right by you.
Yeah. So. Yeah. Oh my God, dude. That sound when it's like super close is like, There's a few videos online. There's a few videos where a camera operator was like following a Marine patrol or whatever, and there's like that, you hear that sound of it super close, and it's like, ooh, God, don't want to hear that, man. That's how you know it's legit.
Yeah, it's scary.
Yeah.
That is for.
So where was your guys' first deployment? What was the mission here?
So we were taking over a VSO site in Uruzgan province, and we were going to be on the border of Helmand province, Uruzgan province, right along the Helmand River. And our job there was to conduct VSO operations while maintaining a pretty long LPOP, or listening observation point, as we're watching this main smuggling route along the Helmand River, where fighters were taking guns and IED material and whatnot, and getting it into Kandahar, and using this route. So we were up there kind of, working with the local villages and stuff like that. And, oh, by the way, getting in daily gunfights, because we were along one of the Taliban's main MSRs to conduct attacks on Kandahar. So
sounds like an exciting spot to be at.
Yeah, we were living, we called this place the Alamo, and we were living in this old, I think Civil Affairs bought this compound from one of the farmers for, whatever amount. But yeah, it was an old chicken, cow, goat, whatever. Mm-hmm. And so, yeah, it's, clean that place up, and that's going to be home for a while. And we would do, weekly movements back to the main fire base, which was Talocan, Tice. Sorry, Firebase Tice. We were doing main movements back to Tice, probably weekly or 10 days or whatever, to get, showers and hot meal or whatnot. But, we had the Helmand River right there. Even though villages were dumping all their sewage in it upriver, we would still bathe in it and stuff like that. So, yeah, it just,
you're part of the ecosystem.
Yeah, kind of worked out the way it did.
Some of those rivers and wadis get pretty rough. Some of the stuff they put on them. Yeah. So when you're doing these the VSO stuff, the village stability operations, are you living on a base that's just a Green Beret base with like ANA, like the Afghan National Army guys there with you, or are you guys on your own little compound and you're working with the village? Like what does that look like?
So this deployment, we had our own little COP, or combat outpost, and we were working with the villages, and we were training up some of their guys, kind of like a militia force. And then we would get some ANP, never ANA out where we were at. But we would get some ALP, Afghan local police, and stuff like that. But that's basically what we were doing, is we were conducting village stability operations along the Helmand River, trying to basically connect our combat outpost, which was right by the big bridge there in Uruzgan province, crossing the Helmand, to Firebase Cobra. And we were trying, and it was, we were there for about 4 months, and then we started to prepare for the major Valley clearance operation, where we were going to be, there was multiple ODAs involved. I think it was an entire company. We had commandos, and everything was involved. This was a couple hundred man strong clearance operation, that we were going to clear the Valley against a force of, Afghan math. They were saying like 2,500 fighters. So let's say 50.
I was like, wow.
Yeah, but still, they had the high ground. They've because we're along the Helmand River, so everything around that is all ridges and peaks and stuff like that. And they have definitely, and they had proven that they own the high ground, with all the caves and everything else. We dropped tons of bombs on them, and then dust would clear, and they just that dishka would open back up again. You're like, how is this possible? But yeah, so I don't know the number of fighters. I'm just, saying if they say it's 2,500, you're probably looking at like 100. Yeah, that was the main objective to what we were doing with village stability operation and training these militia force up and stuff like that. Is now we are going to conduct a clearance operation of this valley. And again, this was a place where we were in daily firefights. And so, yeah, we know we're walking into a shitstorm. the Taliban knows we're going to do something big because they're seeing the buildup around the area.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it was definitely an interesting time, because it's not, we're going to take them by surprise. It's just don't step on an IED and don't get your head canoed. And that's basically it. So
yeah, fuck man. The IEDs that shit was so scary, dude. Just thinking about them, like every time you go out, you're like, man, is today gonna be the day? Like this could be the day. Especially after someone else gets hit, or you hear about like a big hit in another area. I remember when I was in Sangin, south of us, a British vehicle had been hit, an armored vehicle, and killed like 5 guys with the vehicle-borne IED. And I was just like, man. And then a couple days later, I was driving an MRAP, and a vehicle swerved like it was gonna ram me. And I thought for sure, for a half a second, my life flashed before my eyes, and I thought for sure I was dead. And then it was just him doing some crazy Afghan shit. But me and my captain, I looked over at my captain, and we looked at each other like, holy shit, dude, I thought that was it.
Yeah, especially in Helmand province. Like, that place, Wild West.
Dude, for real. Yeah, I was in Sangin during that one, so it was interesting for sure. How were like the IEDs and stuff? Was that the main kind of attacks? Were they using IEDs as ambushes, or like initiate ambushes? Like what was like the enemy composition, or like what was their kind of tactics to counter your guys' work?
So I have 8 deployments to Afghanistan, and I've been through. I've been in areas where they use IEDs to initiate ambushes. I've been in areas where they know troops are going to go, so they'll arm all the IEDs and just leave completely and hope that the IEDs will do the work for them. You just don't know what you're going to get, But the Taliban, are extremely smart. Probably some of the best in the world at targeting with explosive devices under the ground. And so in along the Helmand River, 2010, where we were at, and that's actually where I stepped on my IED. They basically, word had spread, obviously, because you're training with these guys. They know something's going to happen. They don't know when. Now all of a sudden equipment's getting moved across the river. So they just start arming IEDs, and they head to the high ground. And so, yeah, that's that as we started off, September 11th, we kicked off the clearance of the valley that day. And yeah, as we started moving through the different villages where we were in constant fights just a week before that, now they're deserted. But Taliban's been there, so it's IED'd. And the desertion part that's scary in its own, because there's no sounds at all, and it's just super quiet, and you're just like, oh shit, here we go.
Real spooky.
So, yeah, it just all depends, though. Depends on where you're at. Depends on what their plan is. During that valley clearance, the plan was, we're going to IED the shit out of everything down here, and we got the high ground. So now we're going to make it hard for Medevac to come in. We're going to make it hard for, once that IED goes off. Like, I stepped on an IED September 12th, the day after we kicked off the mission. And after I stepped on it, yeah, they started opening up from the ridge tops on our overwatch position on the COP itself, where we were at before. And that's where the command and control guys were at, our company commander and stuff like that. And they started opening up on all that. And so, yeah, that was I guess that was their plan, is let's just wait to hear a boom. All right, we got it. Now let's hit the positions that we can see from where we're at. So,
God, man. That's you can't blame them for it, I guess. That's like, working the tactics. Unfortunately, that's warfare.
Yeah.
What was the IED that you stepped on? Was it victim initiated then? I assume it's a pressure plate IED?
Yeah. It was a pressure plate IED. It was over 25 pounds.
Holy shit, dude.
Broken up into 3 cells. And so the first cell went off, and that's what blew my leg. Like, I was looking down at my leg after the dust cleared, and my boot was like at a 90-degree angle to my leg, and I could see my tib and my fib sticking out of my pants. But that first cell that went off, it disrupted the explosive chain for the other 2 cells. So it actually low ordered the other 2 cells, and they didn't go off. It just blew HME everywhere.
Dude,
yeah,
you're so lucky, man.
Oh yeah, dude. Yeah, because I mean, 25 pounds, and there's not enough to put in a plastic Ziploc bag. But I ate about 7 pounds of it, and yeah, it sucks. 7 pounds is a lot.
Yeah.
I've had people make the remark of, oh, well, that's not that bad. I was like, have you handled a block of M112 C4? That's 1.25 pounds. That will ruin your entire upper or lower body.
Oh, 100%.
So 7 pounds of HME, that's a lot of weight.
Yeah. For people that may not know, for reference, one, let's put it out there that the HME, the homemade explosives, varies. There were some people that are good at making it, and 5 pounds can be way more effective than 5 pounds from a guy that sucked at making IEDs.
5 pounds could
blow
every part of you off.
I've watched a 100-pound IED flip a 6x Cougar, which is like a 60,000-pound vehicle or something crazy like that, over, up on its end. So, that's not, it's that little bit of explosive can do a lot. So that's just, man, you're so lucky that the other ones didn't detonate.
Yeah, and I'm also lucky that the bomb maker, so there's different RE factors to explosives. And the bomb maker that did mine, it was very clean. And he was an experienced bomb maker. And so you get a lot of damage, tissue damage, when the RE factor is equivalent to like TNT, dynamite, stuff like that, because that's more of a pushing explosive.
Can you explain what the RE factor is real quick? I don't want to interrupt you, but I don't know what that means.
Oh, it's so I'm not going to get on here and look like a dumbass.
Just a wave top.
Yeah, I would have to go back to my 18 Charlie days and get out my demo card. But I do know. Let me see. Well, I'm not. Yeah, because
it's just a rating for the blast, is what you're saying.
Yeah, I'm about ready to sound like an idiot if I try to actually, explain it out. But what it is you have different RE factors. Like C4's RE factor is different than dynamite or TNT. So C4 is more of a cutter, whereas in dynamite and TNT, it's more of a pushing charge. So you'll get bomb makers out there that maybe aren't that good, or they haven't fine-tuned their HME mix. And so now you're dealing with something like dynamite or TNT. Well, you step on an IED that has the equivalence of that, and not only is it blowing your legs off, but it's mangling everything because it's a pusher. It's not a cutter. And with C4, it's more of a cutting charge. So the IED I stepped on was very clean. And so it shot up through the bottom of my foot. The blast wave blew my foot in half pretty cleanly, and it exited out at my calf. And there wasn't really a lot of tissue damage. The tissue damage came from my fibula, blowing out the side of my leg. But for the most part, because my doctor told me, he's like, I can fix any bone. Why we amputate is for tissue damage. I was like, okay, that makes sense. And so that's the reason why, like, I was able to step on an IED of that much weight, because 7 pounds is a lot, but I only had the damage that I did because, I essentially stepped on a charge that was pretty clean. And if you were going to step on an IED, I mean, mine was a pretty good one to step on.
If you got to do it, might as well hit that one. So obviously, broken tibia, fibula, you're not staying in country. The Medevac process begins there. Can you kind of walk us through that for people that don't, most guys don't experience the Medevac process? That's got to be a pretty lonely experience, because now you're shockingly away from everything you've known, all of your friends, all of your stuff that you've been doing, and now you're just fucked up in a bed. So what was that like for you? So
when I got medevaced out, I was awake for the whole thing, which was absolutely horrible. And I was trying, I found out I was allergic to morphine. That's hell of a time to find that out.
God damn it.
I chewed up my fentanyl lollipop instead of putting it under your tongue like you're supposed to. So yeah, I had a lot of pain going on, and because I had the allergic reaction, they didn't want to give me any more pain, or they didn't want to give me any more meds because they didn't know what was really, how I'd react to them. And so it's just like, hey, suck it up. We got to get you on a Medevac, and we got to get you out of here. So they had to move me over 500 meters, if not more, maybe a click, because the helicopters couldn't land because of the high ground had RPGs. They were taking Dishka fire and all kinds of other stuff. And so they moved me a click back. And then, yeah, it was basically when I got loaded up onto the helicopter, our Delta, he jumped on board with me. But I watched my team, disappear as I was leaving, and I just instantly felt like I let everybody down.
It's horrible, man.
I fucked up. I let everybody down, and now they're out there without me. And so you start to get that, that guilty feeling that you let everybody down, and you're to blame for it. And then it went from as I was getting bounced around Afghanistan to stabilize me, I went from Tarankout to Kandahar to Bagram, and it took them probably 4 days to stabilize me just to get me to Germany for blood loss and infection and stuff like that. But as I'm getting bounced around Afghanistan, 2010, the hospitals were full. There were so many dudes. A helicopter would land, they would pull, 2 or 3 body bags off and a couple wounded guys. And you're just like, wow, this is war. And so the reality of everything, really hit me, because as I'm, again, moving around Afghanistan, getting prepped to go to Longstool, you're just seeing the destructive power of war in every single bed around you, and you're hearing it, and the moans and the cries and stuff like that. And then you see the panic on the doctors' faces as they're trying to revive somebody or something like that, and you're getting this front view from your little curtained off section of whatever role you're in. And it really hit me pretty hard at that point. I was just like, wow, this is, it's the reality of war. It's the crazy part of war. And in 2010, it was all around you. There wasn't an hour that was going by where a dust off wasn't landed to take casualties or body bags off, and so I finally, I got stabilized. I had a couple blood transfusions. Then I got stabilized and I was sent to Longstool. And again, 2010, just everybody was wounded. It is just the year that, I guess it was the year to get wounded in Afghanistan. And so I was there for a little bit before I was sent to the States, and eventually Brooks Army Medical Center in San Antonio.
Was that, I feel like being in a battlefield hospital where the freshest of the injuries are occurring just feels like a nightmarish kind of situation.
Yeah, I was snowed a lot of the time, just on a lot of pain meds, and I'll never forget this Canadian soldier got brought in, and he was shot up super bad, and his commander was coming in to talk to him because he wasn't going to survive.
Oh, damn, dude.
Yeah. And I'll never forget that. Talking to the guy like, you're going to be okay. But he's going to die. And yeah, that was that right there. I think about that all the time, but it's war. It's the reality of war. And again, it's not just an American thing. This was a Canadian soldier, that, he passed away there. And so, yeah, it's it's different. It definitely is. And it's a reality that a lot of people will never experience. But I'm glad I did, because I've learned so many lessons from that can help other people, if that makes sense.
No, 100%, man. I mean, big shout out to the medical people. You know,
Yeah, they're heroes.
That's
and
every day.
And every time a new guy would come in, they would have to wipe the slate clean if they just lost the guy on a table, 10 minutes ago.
Mm-hmm.
Or if they're trying, they're looking at this guy that lost 3 limbs, and they know his life will never be the same. His life has changed forever because of war. And, all right, dust off's coming back in. We got another guy. I got to completely wipe the slate clean. I got to clear my head, and I got to get ready for this next casualty coming in. Yeah,
that's so insane, man.
That is heroism on a level that, I mean, I can't even imagine it. The mental strain and you don't even got to be in war for that. Look at what our first responders do in America all the time.
That's true. That's true, man. Our ambulance drivers in some cities are doing some of the same crazy shit.
They're heroes.
It's crazy.
It's a mental minefield. Well, I guess no pun intended, but it's,
it's when you see it's just human destroying each other, and the results of that, it's just sad. I remember in 2013, we just got to Leatherneck. We're waiting to fly into Sangin. And me and my corpsman went over to the squadrons to get updated map data and just kind of introduce ourselves to the Cobra guys. And then we went over to the Dust Off guys so my corpsman could talk to them and stuff. And I remember as we were walking over there, we're walking by the Bastion Medical Center, and a Chinook landed and offloaded 6 people. And I'm just like, fuck, man. I mean, all of them were on gurneys. These weren't walking wounded. These were fucked up people. And someone standing there was like, yeah, there was a V-bid that went off. They're like, we got a call that a V-bid went off, so we got this coming in. And I'm just like, this is day one, man. This is like, I'm watching that, and I'm like, yeah, man, we're about to go into it,
Yep.
Man, it really fucks your mind up. I mean, I guess it doesn't really fuck your mind up, but it like, I don't know, for me, it set my mind on to like, all right, man, it's about to for real get real, because Leatherneck is Leatherneck. It's a big-ass base. There's restaurants and weird shit. But when you get out to the FOBs and the cops and out in the country, then it's for real.
And that's what's crazy is throughout the thousands of years, men have been flocking to war to get that experience, that real experience, because every man, well, I don't know about every man now, but most men have that question, what will I do when someone's trying to kill me? How will I react? And people have been going, or guys have been going to war for, I don't know, 1,000, but hundreds of years to answer that question. What will I do when someone's trying to kill me? And the realities of war. It's like these kids that are just flooding over to Ukraine right now because they want the sexy Hollywood idea of war, and then when the reality comes that it's an artillery and a rocket, barrage, and you may never see the enemy.
Mm-hmm.
You probably won't. It's a lot like Afghanistan, then all of a sudden war's not sexy anymore, and blood and guts and mangled bodies, and just lines of body bags. That's not what Hollywood said. Like, I don't want to do this anymore. I want to go home. And again, that's, even in Ukraine, that's what's going on right now with a lot of these guys that are going over there, is they want to be able to answer that question. What would I do when someone's trying to kill me? Unfortunately, it's a hard question to answer with artillery, because you're either going to eat it or you're not. There's nothing you're going to do about it.
Yeah, no, 100%. So, like you said, you did 8 deployments to Afghanistan. I'd like to talk more about those, but we'll have to do another episodes down the road sometime, because I know we're on a timeline here, and I want to give you the opportunity to talk about the Ukraine, because you've been over in Ukraine doing work and stuff, and I know you guys are planning a trip back, and you're trying to raise some money for like mine detectors and stuff like that. Can you kind of explain what you're doing over there, what's kind of happening, what you saw on the ground, and what's the way forward for you and your organization?
Yeah, and I actually got more time, so I'm not worried about jumping off. If they call over, I'll just let them know I need to I need to push it 30 minutes or whatnot. So
Okay, I appreciate it.
yeah, but yeah, Ukraine. So I retired from the Army January 2020, and then I went back as a contractor. In my job as a contractor, I was so it's called JET, Joint Expeditionary Team, but basically counter threat advisor, and we focused on IEDs, UAS, and stuff like that. So I'm not going to get into all that, but so I retired January January 24th, 2020, and I was back in Afghanistan February 2020 as a contractor. Well,
jeez.
COVID broke out and everything like that. So, and I had just gotten home from Afghanistan, October 2019. So I'm back February 2020. I'm retired now. Now I'm a contractor, and COVID breaks out. So my deployment ends up getting, I go from a 4-month deployment to a 7-month deployment. Not a bad thing because you're making good money. I came home for, a couple months, like 3 or maybe 2.5 months. And then I went back over in December of 2020, and I left in July of 2021. So let me see here. The situation that unfolded in July and August of 2021 really bothered me. I had a hard time, mentally wrapping my head around what was going on. And I'm not going to get into the politics on anything. But I was really looking for my purpose. What's my purpose? I believe when guys get out of the military, not having a purpose is one of the most deadliest things that guys go through, is they don't have a purpose. I used to be this, and now I'm this. Who am I? What am I? You could say, thank you for your service. Do you even know what the fuck I used to do? I used to do this. I was a Green Beret. I did all this. I stepped on an IED. I got a Silver Star. I did all this stuff. And the average civilian at Applebee's is like, cool, man. Thanks for your service. And you don't, because they can't understand. Mm-hmm. And so mentally, guys go through this very, very hard time because they used to operate at this level. And now the average person is like, yeah, man, I really appreciate everything you did. But you don't get that feedback you need for what, or you think you need for the experiences you have from what you did. So I was going through, after we shut down Afghanistan, I was going through, a lot of just a lot of mental, like, why did it happen this way? How a lot of blood spilt over there, lost a lot of buddies, all this other stuff. The same thing that I'm fairly certain 90% of the veterans that are listening to this they went through too, or are still going through. And I didn't have a purpose anymore. Mm-hmm. And my whole world had just kind of, not my whole world, but my entire military experience kind of just crumbled all around me in a way that I just didn't agree with. And it left a pretty hollow place in me that I needed to fill. I needed to have that purpose. Well, Russia, they didn't necessarily invade because the war has been going on since 2014, but Russia started a new phase of the war and moving 100 plus thousand troops across the border February 24th, 2022. And so I quit my government job because I wanted to go over, and I needed a purpose. I needed to do something. And so I was talking to a friend, and his family started one of the biggest missionary organizations called YWAM. And I was talking to him, and kind of like the way we are right now. And I was like, yeah, man, maybe I'll just go to Ukraine and see what kind of trouble I can get into. And he was like, what do you want to do in Ukraine? You gonna go over there and fight or something? And that part didn't really, like, that wasn't filling that gap that I had. And he's like, well, if you want to go over there, man, there's a group of missionaries that are going into areas before the Russians move in, and they're evacuating people out. And we need drivers, and we could really use a guy with military experience to help these dudes not roll up to a Russian checkpoint and be like, oh, don't worry about it. We're missionaries. We're good. And find out quickly you're not good. So situational awareness in combat. And so, yeah, I quit my job, and middle of March, I went over to link up with this missionary organization and started driving vans to evacuate people out of areas as the Russians were moving in. And then that transition, because I was there March to May, but that transitioned into, okay, now the Russians have left places like Irpin and Bucha and other areas around. Now we're bringing in supplies and food and medical aid and all this other stuff that the military just has way too much going on with, I don't know, fighting a war. And so they're relying on all these aid organizations and missionary organizations to come in and help the civilian population out. And by just being over there helping, I'm unarmed, I'm a non-combatant, and all that good stuff right there, the reward and the fulfillment that I got from being extremely vulnerable in a hostile area, and I'm just there to help. I'm not there to take lives. I'm there to give hope. And as everybody knows, hope is extremely dangerous because it spreads, and it spreads very quickly. And that's how a lot of movements and uprisings and everything. I mean, look at Iran right now. That's all based off of hope. But yeah, I mean, that mission from March to May, it gave me that purpose. But during that mission, I started to see the ugly parts of war, and it was landmines everywhere because of my job as a 18 Charlie, engineer. The landmines that both sides were putting out, and you're constantly hearing about, civilian vehicles hitting a TM-62 anti-tank mine. Everyone's dead inside. Tractor hitting a landmine, farmers dead, tractors, all this stuff. Just civilian casualty, or the PFM butterfly mines, or the Palm 2s and 3s, and just civilian casualty, nonstop. And all of a sudden now, this humanitarian missionary mission, which that's a lot of missionary. Anyways, I get tongue tied. But now all of a sudden, this mission that I'm on, now I see a need that I'm actually somewhat decent at. I can find an IED, whether I step on it or I find it with my detector. I can find the son of a bitch. I'm pretty good at it. And so now I'm seeing like, hey, I can come over here and help with this landmine situation. And so I planned my next trip back. I got home in May. I went back for the month of August, and I started, I got brought into an area that was, it was south of Izum, which is big in the news right now because they're finding mass graves all over it. But farmers were trying to get ready for the September harvest, and their fields are all mined. And they say, well, yeah, we're going to go out here and dig these mines up because we got to harvest. And we've already lost 2 tractors to landmines out here. But still, like, this is my livelihood. These thousands of acres of wheat. This is how we feed the world. And so, yeah, we're going to come out here and dig them up ourselves. I was like, I mean, can I help? And so now all of a sudden, I'm getting, my purpose has come full circle from the 18 Charlie course in 2009 to 2022. I'm in a field in Ukraine, and we're pulling up anti-tank landmines so these Ukrainians can cut harvest. And my purpose now, I have my purpose. And so I'm going back in November, and we're gonna demine areas from November to late December. Then I'll come home again and get ready for the next one. But the purpose has also shifted to helping these guys help themselves. And so I am. I train people up on the mine detectors that I bring over there, and we go out and we actually do it real time, and we find mines and we do this, and then I donate the mine detectors over to them and the remote pull equipment over to them and stuff like that. So the fulfillment and that gap that I was missing in my life, what's my purpose, has turned into kind of like the book, Tip the Spear, Landmine Removal. And that's my life's purpose now. And it's not just Ukraine. It's all over the world.
What a crazy purpose to have, man. Like, I mean, that's awesome, but it's so dangerous, obviously. The inherent danger of being involved with landmines is undeniable, right?
Well, it's only my problem till it's not. And I probably don't even know it.
That's true, yeah. That's a good way to put it. I mean, what is the threat of you... Like, if you were to be captured or something, if that were to happen, what have they told you? Like, when you go over there as American volunteer, what's being told to you? Like, if something happens, what do you do? You know?
So this is a very controversial subject to a lot of people, because I've definitely heard answers all over the spectrum, and I've been on the front lines. I had a group take me. They're like, "Hey, we need help in this village clearing booby traps." Okay. We get to the village and we have RPGs flying over our heads. And I'm like, hey guys, that's they need to be somewhat close for that to happen. Where's the Russian front at? And they're like 500 meters over there. It's like, okay, we're going to clear these booby traps, but I need to set up some parameters with you guys. I'm a humanitarian non-combatant. Mm-hmm. And they were like, yeah, we wondered why you wouldn't take a gun. And I was like, yeah, something like that. But no, so basically, it depends on the group that rolls you up. Everyone has seen in the news that the Russians did a prisoner exchange. So the British guys that were sentenced to death, and the 2 Americans, and all this other stuff, and even the heroes that were in the Azov steel plant in Mariupol, they were released in a prisoner exchange. What happened during their captivity, I have no idea, but I can guarantee you it probably wasn't good. So why? So my stance on it has been this. If I got rolled up, number one, I'm unarmed. I have documents proving I'm a humanitarian aid worker. And also, I'm affiliated with a missionary organization. So am I saying that I'm going to be safe and everything's going to be good? No. If a Chechnyan group rolled me up and we just happened to duke it out against them in Afghanistan, they're probably going to put me on a shower curtain in front of a camcorder and go to town. But I have a better chance at my survival and my release being negotiated if I'm unarmed and I have the props, I guess we'll just call them props, to show my innocence, because capture is all about innocence. If you've been through SEER school, you know all about that. And I do. I actually, it's not a cover or a cover within a cover. It's my fucking job. I am a humanitarian landmine removal guy. And so, yeah, I definitely have heard the remarks, oh, well, it doesn't matter. If they roll you up, they're going to just fucking kill you. And it's like, yeah, except for they still are going to have to battle all these human rights allegations that are coming out. And they don't want, I'm not saying I'm better than anybody, but they don't want a dead humanitarian missionary American on their hands. Because that opens up a can of worms that, they just don't want to deal with. And it's not, again, it's not saying I'm better than anybody in the world, because I'm not. I'm just a human being. But there are, there's that can of worms that they just don't want to deal with.
Yeah.
And they have a proven track record in Ukraine of doing high value prisoner swaps. So I was thinking, I mean, shit, if I get rolled up, they may release a general and I may go home and
yeah, you're a pretty good bargaining chip. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I would hope that if I did get rolled up, I would be a good enough bargaining chip to where I'm not going to be either, hanging at the end of the rope, firing squad or whatnot. But again, it also depends on who rolls you up. If a Chechnyan group rolled you up, or Wagner rolled you up, or some of the Syrian units that are over there rolled you up,
I mean, and there's proxy units for the Russians over there, like just the same way there are for the Ukrainians. I don't know. But if I had to get rolled up, I would really want to be rolled up by a Russian regular unit that, would go through a certain protocol and not by a Chechnyan extremist organization that are just like, hey, video camera time. Do it.
For real. They just called up. I was looking at Twitter this morning, and there was some video coming out of the Chechnyans mobilizing. They are, because the Russians are mobilizing they're making their like reserve forces and stuff like that mobilize, which I think we've all seen the videos of their guys trying to leave. There's like men trying to leave the country and all that, fighting the police that are rounding them up to go fight. And I don't know if you saw the videos either. The recruits or whatever you want to call them put out videos of the weapons they're being given, and they're all just rust shit.
Yeah,
I mean, they'll probably still fire because it's an AK, but
yeah, it's basically the Stalingrad thing. Like, hey man, once a guy falls, take his weapon.
So crazy, dude. In 2022, the fact that it's before the whole Russia-Ukraine thing, I always looked at Russia like, oh man, that's a legitimate peer. That's like, we got to look out. We're in our own minds. We look at our near peers, if you will, like Russia, China, and we're like, hey man, I think we kind of put them up on a pedestal because we want them to be good because it validates our training, I guess. But it seems like they're nowhere near as capable as we all kind of thought. What are your thoughts on that? You were in Ukraine. I mean, they're using these semi-Cold War or World War II like siege tactics where they're just throwing bodies and destroying everything in their path. That doesn't seem to be a very good way to do this in 2022.
Yeah, I mean, it's gone back to trench warfare. If people went to my YouTube page, they would see some of the frontline areas that I've been to, and it literally is. It's World War I trench warfare. It's crazy.
What's your YouTube channel, real quick? Give a quick plug.
I mean,
I'll put it on the screen. Don't worry about it. I'll put it on the screen.
Yeah, I can't. I usually go to the share button. I just hit copy URL, then I paste it. I don't know. I think it's Tip of the Spear, Ryan Hendrickson, because there's a couple Tip of the Spears out there.
Okay.
Yeah, come on, buddy, you're good. My dog, he's wanting attention like crazy right now.
That's what they do.
Yeah, so I have my opinions on it, and a lot of people don't agree with my opinions. And when I get going down what I think, it kind of gets a little controversial. So I'll just do broad strokes, and I'll let all the listeners know, first and foremost, I am not pro-Russian at all. So take what you want from this, but understand that I'm not pro-Russian.
Mm-hmm.
But what Russian is thrown at Ukraine right now it's their mothball army. For the world to underestimate the power that Russia still holds in reserves would be a very, very fatal mistake. People are talking about, look at this 1960s, tank that they got rolling out here. Wow, this is the equipment that they got. Or look at this. You'd be very, very mistaken if you thought Russia did not have the capability and the resources to completely end this war in 2 or 3 days. Now, would every city be leveled? Yes, it would be Aleppo. Would there be really any kind of infrastructure left for the Russians to have once they were, marching, through whatever city it was? No, there would not be. They would have to kill hundreds of thousands of civilians, and they're not going to do that. That doesn't help their cause at all. Even with all the oil reserves they have in Russia, Vladimir Putin, he knows he has Europe by the balls. He does, because winter's coming and he controls the oil. He's not stupid, and this has been the plan probably since the beginning. It's like, yeah, not a problem. I'll let Europe freeze for a little bit. They'll put a lot of pressure on the Ukrainians to stop the war. Then all of a sudden, I'm going to have Donetsk and Donbass these separatist countries that are, oh, by the way, going to say, we don't want to be our own country. We want to be under the umbrella of Russia. And now I got new territory. Yeah. And he's going to use oil and starving the world through the wheat and everything like that, that he has the capability of doing. Now, the ballistic missiles and the intercontinental, bombers that he has, and all these resources that, when we're sitting in America, we're like, all right, what if a country invaded us? Who would it be and what would they use? Russia always comes up, and it's bombers and it's ballistics and it's all this other stuff. That capability is there. And you would be mistaken to think that they don't have that capability. And so people, they say, well, then why are they in the situation they're in right now in Ukraine? Well, number one, I do believe that he is achieving his objectives in Donbass and Donetsk and south in the southern regions. That's one. Number two, I believe that he underestimated Ukraine greatly because he and his generals and his commanders looked at the Crimea in 2014 and said, yeah, we're going to be in Kyiv in 3 days. I mean, there were Russian Spetsnaz that were jumping in, and they had their parade uniforms in their ruck. That was part of their kit.
Oh, really?
I was like, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. And so this parade that they were going to have in downtown Kyiv in 3 days, the 3-day war that Vladimir Putin promised, and now all of a sudden he is actually facing a Ukrainian resolve and resistance that he wasn't ready for.
Mm-hmm.
Because if they pulled the same shock and awe that they did in Syria, we would be having a different conversation right now. But he thought that the door would be open, wide open, for the Russian liberators to come in and liberate the country from the Nazi fascists and all this other stuff, all this other rhetoric that, that he believed and he was briefed on from his commanders. Okay, fair enough. So that's the reason why when you see this main push to Kyiv, they're conscripted forces, they're Chechens, Wagner, and all these other guys. When it's like, well, if you would have sent in your Desert Storm, type of invasion like we did in Iraq, this would probably be a whole nother conversation. But they didn't. They thought that they could take it over with their JV team, or not even JV team, their middle school football, peewee football team. Mm-hmm. And they kept the NFL team, at bay because they thought that they would be able to run through Ukraine in 3 days. And then now all of a sudden they would be conducting occupation, missions and stuff like that, turning the government over to proxy Russian and all this other stuff. Instead, they ran into a meat grinder, and that's called the Ukrainian spirit and the Ukrainian pride and the Ukrainian resolve. And they weren't ready for that. That's why we are where we are right now. And in the end, I do. People say, well, what do you think is going to happen? I believe that Russia is going to maintain control over Donetsk and Donbass. I believe that the ground that the Ukrainians are taking back, Russia's tired. They're tired. And their country, it's not going to be the Russian army that loses the war for them. It's going to be the Russian civilians in Russia. Mm-hmm. And it's going to be the Vietnam effect. That's what's going to lose the war for them. And so now all of a sudden, I believe they're going to maintain control over Donetsk and Donbass. Now we're going to talk about another phase of the war that I believe is coming too. And that's going to be after Europe has claimed, all right, the war is over with. We'll deal with this. That's fine. Turn the oil back on. We're cold. And let's get the wheat flowing again and all these other exports. Now all of a sudden there's going to be an insurgency and an unconventional war raised in the Donbass and Donetsk regions that are going to be kind of similar from 2014 all the way up to 2022, what was happening there anyways. And I believe it's going to turn into an unconventional war where you're either going to have proxy groups or anti-Russian groups or Ukrainian, special operation or just whatever it is. And the fighting is going to continue there for many, many, many more years until the Russians say, wow, too many Russian civilians are getting killed, and there's another invasion. And it's just going to, I believe it's going to continue to repeat itself until the world understands that, you know, Ukraine is not a stomping ground, but Ukraine is not NATO. The world does not have any ties to Ukraine at all. So we can actually bring the Russian military into Ukraine and do the same thing the world did to them in Afghanistan.
Mm-hmm.
And kind of what Russia did to us in Afghanistan. We can bleed them out with 1,000 or million little cuts. And that's what I think is going on right now. And it's sad because there's civilians that are dying all the time. And it's going to take 100 years to demine that country if the world even makes it a priority to do it. Because look at Vietnam, Cambodia, Laos. Look at parts of Africa. Yeah, it's a big deal for about a year, and then the world moves on to the next shiny object, and kids end up getting their legs blown off and maimed for the rest of their lives because we've moved on. And I fear that the same is going to happen in Ukraine.
Yeah, man. I mean, quite possibly, right? It's unfortunately none of us know what's going to happen. I heard a theory last week or a couple weeks ago saying that world powers aren't doing more to try to stop the war because they're using this as a moment to gauge everybody's military capabilities in real time.
I mean, I believe the world's not doing more to stop this war because we have Russia and another Afghanistan. And what happened to the Soviet Union after Afghanistan? Well,
yeah. And they're already getting protests, anti-war protests, because especially after this mobilization, that really turned a lot of Russians. Here's a question, because you've been over to Ukraine and stuff like that. What are some good sources to get some good information? I try to find sources, like really independent news coming out of those areas that seem like they're pretty on point. What is, from someone that's been there, is there any news sources that you can point myself and the listeners to find good info?
The problem is this is such a propaganda war.
100%.
There's more propaganda about this war. This is a TikTok war. Mm-hmm. And there's more propaganda by both sides on this war that it's very, very hard to find good resources. I mean, just from the Ukrainian side, the Ukrainians are using propaganda to their benefit so good. Mm-hmm. I mean, they're using it so well. I mean, they're talking about 50,000 dead Russian soldiers. What they don't mention is that most of those dead are people that are a part of the Russian invasion of it, whether they're Syrian, whether they're Wagner, whether they're conscripted, whether they're actual dead Russian soldiers is far less than that. Mm-hmm. But the Ukrainians are using propaganda flawlessly. It's amazing what they're doing, and it's very effective. Like, I'm not talking shit. Propaganda is a huge part of war. It's a huge part of war because either one is you take away all hope and then you've won, or you give hope. Mm-hmm. Giving hope, like I said, however long ago, is extremely dangerous, because if someone has hope and a purpose, then they'll die for that hope and purpose. And that's when, and what do the Ukrainians have right now? They have hope. And now we kind of see what don't the Russians have right now? Yeah. Hope.
It's not looking good, man. The Ukrainians are going to have to survive the winter. I think if they survive the winter, they'll have a pretty good chance of either holding ground or maybe even winning some back again, like they did like 2 weeks ago or last week when they did that offensive. But the winter's going to be tough though. Yeah. For them and Europe.
Yeah, winter's going to be extremely tough, but it's going to be extremely tough for the invading army.
For sure.
The Germans found that out with Russia. You know, the invading army has throughout history had an extremely difficult time in the winter in that region of the world. So yes, I do believe that the winter is where the tide of this is going to turn, and the Russians are going to fortify and secure Donetsk and Donbass. And then that's going to be the stalemate again, since it was in 2014. Mm-hmm. And then the world is going to make a ceasefire / peace agreement to get the oil turned back on. And then Ukraine, unfortunately, is going to fall behind the scenes when the next shiny object comes up, which could be, I don't know, Kosovo again, or I mean, Azerbaijan, that's popping off.
Man, again, yeah. Just the other day, there was another attack. Yeah.
Yeah. And so the next shiny object is going to take the world's focus away from Ukraine, because after Crimea happened, how many people still knew that people were dying daily in Ukraine from this war? Nobody. It's like, the Russians invaded Crimea. Okay, what's the next thing coming on? All right, we just did this, this, and this. Nice. All right, good. Hey, my soy latte. It's why am I waiting 5 minutes for this? This is bullshit. And we keep moving on. I'm not saying that that's wrong. I'm just saying that that's the reality of things.
Yeah, it's hard. It's hard for the average American to care. Yeah.
And so I'm trying to fit into the behind the scenes area where, even though the world has moved on from this Ukrainian conflict because the oil is turned back on and our bellies are full with products from Ukraine, we're still over there removing landmines and helping out the best that we can. Because I know what's going to happen, and everybody knows what's going to happen, because if you've been around long enough, you know the world moves on quickly.
How can people support your missions to the Ukraine?
So I actually have a link that I'll send you. It's my link tree, and it has a Venmo or PayPal donation platform there. And I'm in the process right now of waiting on my 501c3 to get approved. And so now, I can get the tax status and everything like that for people who donate. But yeah, right now it's just, and I'll give you the link to that, but it's, it's just my two different platforms, the Venmo or the PayPal. Okay. And I buy equipment. So I have, I just got in my first 5 Chea mine detectors. That's $12,000. I got another $10,000 coming of remote pull equipment. I'm going to buy another 10 Chea mine detectors. Then I head over, I work with units, and then I donate the equipment to them so they can, continue on even after I'm gone. Because what's it all about? Force multiplying.
For sure. I think I read on your website, or maybe another one, it was saying that your goal is $60,000 and 45,000 of that is just in metal detectors and mine detectors.
Yeah, so that was a previous goal.
Oh, okay.
That's pretty high. That's a lot of money to raise. And so now it's just, it's just as I raise money and I can afford this equipment or these safety devices and stuff like that, I purchase them. And then I send out videos on all my platforms so people can see what their donations are going to.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And so that's pretty much what I did. I did have this, like, I'm going to raise 60,000 for this. But then I got to thinking, it's like, well, when we hit that 60,000, people may be like, well, why do you need more? You just said 60. Mm-hmm. It's like, well, this is an ongoing thing. This is years.
Yeah. Cause you said you're going in November and then you're going to come back and then plan your next trip out. So
yeah, I'll go in November and then April. Those are the 2 next trips over there. Hopefully my 501c3 is up. Or is good to go, and now all of a sudden I can start, bringing people over with me, paying operating costs, travel costs, commission for I don't know, removing landmines maybe.
Yeah. What a crazy job.
Like a little penny in your pocket for a dangerous job. You're not gonna make money on it, but I don't want guys to have to figure out how to pay the bills at home when they're coming over to volunteer. I want to be able to cover that for them them volunteering over. And I'm hoping to bring this to that level. And then Ukraine's the start, but this is international. This is going to be all over Southeast Asia, Africa, Middle East, wherever people ask for help that are dealing with these explosive hazards. I want to be able to help, and I want to bring on, once my company is up and going, I want to bring on guys that are so much smarter than me. I'm just a dumbass 18 Charlie. There are some wizards out there around the world that I would love, man, if they're like, hey, I can donate my time for a month. Please do, man. Mm-hmm. And then I want to learn from you too.
Yeah, for sure.
And that's what I'm hoping.
That's awesome, man. I think that's good stuff. I think it's really great that you're, have the community fund it. You're not going to some like shady investor to try to find money or anything like that. You're having people, you're upfront about it. You're showing videos of what you're doing. I think that's awesome stuff. You also have your book if you want to go ahead and promote that as well.
Yeah. So, I wrote as every good special operator should, I guess. I wrote a book, and it released July 2021. But it is, it's about my experiences, but it's not through the lens of combat and heroism and all this other stuff. It's the mental health aspect. And so, I made myself extremely vulnerable in this book because I do know that we are getting absolutely crushed as a nation by the mental health crisis we have going on, whether it's with veterans or first responders. And suicide rates are astronomical right now, and we haven't even seen a drop in the bucket yet, because once that fully starts to hit the veteran community, a lot of guys are going to be looking for answers and a purpose. That's another thing with this foundation that I'm starting is I want to bring in veterans that have experience, or maybe they don't. There's a lot of things that they can do to help. But I know that for me, one of the best, one of the best things that I have done for PTS, post-traumatic stress, is helping other people and having a purpose, having a reason to still be here. My reason is this. And for me, it's helping. Helping is it's so contagious in a positive way. And it does. It really, people ask me, is there a cure for PTSD? And I think there is. And it's called having a purpose and helping people. Because you're on Earth for a very, very short time. So while you're here, why not help some people while you're at it? So, but the book is about my struggles. Just from how I grew up in some of the situations and environments and whatnot, to my military time, and then stepping on my IED and how my life changed from that, how I was very close to being one of the 22 a day, to taking control of my life again and understanding that, that this is just a period in time. That's all it is. Like this dark time that you're going through right now, or this horrible situation, or whatever the circumstance is, it's only a small period of time. And whether you can see through that or not right now, time's going to keep moving on, and you will move on from this. But you're going to have a point in time in your life where you're going to look back, and you're either going to be disgusted at how you handled it, or you're going to be proud of how you handled it. And being proud of how you handled these bad situations that you go through in life, one of the best ways to do it is help people with the experiences that you have. Mm-hmm. So with me, I decided to write the book because if it helped one person in a dark time, that through my experience of being very close to one of the veteran suicide statistics, if it helps one person understand that you're not alone, you don't go through it alone, and kind of my experiences and how I dealt with it. Now all of a sudden I'm using this dark time, like stepping on an IED actually saved my life, and it turned me into the man that I am now. I almost lost my life that day along the Helmand River, and I almost lost my life a few times after that because of the residual effects of that IED and my mental state that I was in, until I finally took control over who I was as a man. And I used that IED to make myself a stronger man, renew my relationship with God, and to use that blast to help other people. And now I have the purpose. And yeah, I can use my experiences that I went through to help other people. And I really do. I think that's, what's the meaning of life? That's what I think it is. I believe that that's the meaning of life, because the fulfillment and the purpose that you get from that, you can't match it.
Yeah.
I don't know what to say.
Yeah.
That's it. That's the fountain of youth, I guess.
For sure. That's awesome, man. I appreciate you coming on the podcast and telling your story. I think it's inspirational what you're doing, what you've done. You've continued to fight through adversity from being injured to continuing going back to combat multiple times. Now you're trying to help the citizens of Ukraine by removing bombs, and mines and stuff like that, which is, somebody's got to do it, right? So I think that's all good stuff. I hope people check out your website, go there, maybe donate, help you guys get some of the equipment that you really need and that the Ukrainians really need and stuff like that. Social media, are you on Instagram? What's your Instagram?
Yeah, I'm on Instagram at crap.
I'll put it on the screen.
I'll have to send it to you. I think it's Ryan M. Hendrickson .tip of the spear.
Okay.
And
yeah,
I'm on Twitter at tip of the spear 42. I do know that one.
Sounds good.
And I'll have to send you the link. I'm horrible at this. I need to get this in my head because I just
marketing. You got to get the marketing part down, man. That's how that's how you're going to get your organization to the next level. But yeah, so I'll put all that stuff in the show description. If you're listening to this, you can check that out. If you're watching, you obviously saw it throughout the show, all his links. So check those out. Mine is at Former Action Guys, at Former Action News on Instagram. And, go to patreon.com, support the show. My brain farted there for a second. Go to patreon.com, support the show. All my audio listeners the episodes are ad free, and I'm trying to go for, a listener supported show. So patreon.com, Former Action Guys, check that out. And that's it. That's it, man. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, I appreciate you having me on and definitely spreading the word you're spreading and awareness that you're spreading. So I appreciate it.
Yeah,
a lot of veterans, some great stories. It's awesome.
It is, dude. I'm humbled by the people like yourself, the caliber of people that come on the show, and it's funny because people, it's one of those, like I said before in the show, you're never the coolest guy in the room, and I'm constantly reminded that I may have done some cool stuff, but there's some way cooler dude that done some crazy stuff out there. So yeah, man, it's good stuff.